Hello and welcome to the EURACTIV Agrifood Podcast. I'm Natasha Foote.
And I'm Gerardo Fortuna.
And here's your weekly update on all things agriculture and food in the EU from EURACTIV's Agri-Food news team.
This week, energy prioritization in the food sector, pesticide cuts backlash, and the world of biostimulants.
So, welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back to our listener and to Natasha.
Yes, I haven't been here for a few weeks. Feels good to be back with the original duo this week.
The original, I still can't believe I'm podcasting with her.
You should be honoured. Yes, you have the OGs back talking to you this week. And this week we're going to start talking about the subject that everyone is really talking about at the moment, which is, of course...
Oh gosh, shall I say that?
Yes.
Energy prioritization.
Well, the energy crisis, yes. But specifically, we're talking about energy prioritization this week. And that is because there's been a lot of talk about which sector or which protected customers is the technical term, gets the gas supply, gets to be prioritized in the event that there's a limited supply of gas. And of course, the question right now for us and for a lot of our stakeholders is whether the agri-food sector will be prioritised. Now, we spoke with the Commission last week for an article. You can find that on EURACTIV, where the Commission explained that basically this is the prerogative of member states. So they get to decide who's prioritised, where the gas supply goes, depending on the needs of individual countries. So, based on that, of course, the next question is, well, how will this play out? What does this mean for the agri-food sector if some countries are prioritising it and some countries aren't? You know, what kind of situation will this create? And so we actually spoke with a few industry stakeholders this week who were warning that an uncoordinated or haphazard approach to this, where there's a kind of patchwork of energy prioritisation of different sectors amongst different countries, could really create a lot of market disruption in the agri-food sector. And so they were saying that, you know, it really risks causing problems for the proper functioning of the food supply chains. And they were urging decision makers to not to unintentionally jeopardize food security and the availability in the context of the energy crisis. So they were saying, you know, of course, the agri-food sector is by nature, you know, very energy intensive. Things, you know, it's reliant on processes such as heating, cooling, freezing, all of these things in a continuous cycle. So it leaves it particularly vulnerable to shortages. It means that if there was a situation where they had to cut electricity consumption during certain hours, that would have a lot of consequences for the sector. And of course, you know, a lot of the operations in the food chain are dependent, you know, highly interdependent between borders, you know, different sectors, all kind of interrelated between raw materials, feed, packaging, processing. So, you know, they were saying that the entire chain needs to be prioritized.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting topic because now that we're going to discuss these energy shortages and also the increasing prices, several sectors will asked to be prioritized. There was also last week the warning from the generic drug manufacturers, Medicine for Europe. So they're basically saying that they can't afford to produce cheap drugs like generics because of the surge in energy prices. So again, it's going to be a bit like in the COVID pandemic when we were discussing which sector should be, again, prioritized in the case of crisis.
Everyone wants a slice of the pie, basically.
So it's also a good test for the resilience tools that the Commission and the member states, because in the end, it's a competence of the member states, but as the experts that we contacted told us, it's also a matter of coordination, and this is basically where the Commission could weigh in. So, but we move from ruckus to another.
Your favorite word.
Yeah. It all started with an Agrifood podcast, one of the first that we recorded. And to be fair, I didn't know the meaning of the word ruckus. And then I started saying that
every day.
Compulsively. Yeah. So the other ruckus is the current discussion around the Industrial Emission Directive, and Tash is wondering why.
My eyes are lighting up. What's this? Tell me
why
more.
agriculture should be bothered about the Industrial Emission Directive, because this is the revision of 10-year-old directive dealing with the, again, emission in several industrial sectors. And to be fair, the current directive already covers a small number of livestock farms. It's about 4% of the European Union pigs and poultry farms. But the Commission presented a new proposal in April trying to broaden the scope and also the number of livestock farms covered by this Industrial Emission Directive. Why we're talking about this? Because last week, both in the Agri-Fish Council, so the meeting with ministers, and in the Agriculture Committee of the European Parliament, there was debate with lawmakers. So the Commission presented their main ideas included in the proposal. It's quite rare, but the ministers and the MEPs agree
on the same page.
Are on the same page.
But it's
kind of a first.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable. Yeah.
Just to give a tiny clarification, the lawmakers were supposed to deliver or to amend the Commission's proposal are the environment ministers and the environment MEPs, so the MEPs in the MV committee. But after very long negotiations within the European Parliament, the Agriculture Committee managed to get the competence. Not only it's not going to be an opinion, but the competence on the parts. There are the main provision related basically to the rearing of animals. So just to put into context, the Commission is proposing to cover no longer 4%, but 13% of the largest cattle, pigs, and poultry farms in the European Union. According to the Commission, this is about 60% of ammonia and 43% of methane emissions. And in also the new, this is quite interesting because the new proposal will start to have effects starting from 2029. So the Commission, particularly in the presentation before the MEPs, they basically said that we need to prepare the post 2027 cap.
Oh God!
So it's the first time that I heard that we have to put something in the new cap, and the current one is not even in force at the moment.
I know. Well, that's actually not the first time. I actually was speaking with at the informal meeting of ministers in Prague. There was also
the reason why you weren't here in the past.
Exactly. Just to drop in that why I wasn't here. There was already discussions about, we have to do that in the new cap, and we have to put this on the table for the new cap. And I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know why you have just recovered from the last cap reform. But it's true that, in not a crazy amount of time, there will have to be discussions about the next one.
Yeah, and
not just yet. Yeah, I mean, maybe 2024. I think was what.
But there are several interesting aspects. I mean, we're a bit out of the topic, but there are several interesting aspects. Even if you think about the third pillar, the social rights pillar, super interesting because I mean it starts to be applied from 2025, but actually the fruits are probably gonna be.
Where are you going with this?
No, but I mean, you're gonna see the best results after 2027. So you need to think about the next process because I mean it's 5 years. 5 years is nothing, Tash. Where you were 5 years ago.
True. Well, all that fun to come, but let's not go too much into that topic right now, because we also have other things to discuss this week. So, namely, what I'm thinking of here is that there was also a very interesting discussion at the meeting of agriculture ministers this week on the Commission's plans to slash pesticide use. So here I'm talking about the sustainable use of pesticides regulation, which was unveiled back in June after it had a whole series of different setbacks. And member states are not very happy with these plans, I think it's safe to say. And they were calling for, and we're hearing it again, and this is not the first time we've heard this, but they're calling for a new impact assessment.
Impact assessment.
There's some.
It's also quite interesting to recall that why we're having the discussion. Okay, the sustainable use of pesticide regulation is about to be discussed at the trilogue level. Not really, because they haven't found a compromise text.
It's moving that way.
It's moving that way, let's say. Yeah, I mean, it takes time. But the point is that something happened in the summer, like when the Commission liked to put forward the most controversial, the most controversial stuff. So the member state. So if you remember, the sustainable use of pesticide regulation is basically about establishing some targets that the member states are supposed to propose, and some reduction plans. It's all about impact assessment and plans, like strategic plan. But
these are the only words we ever say, I feel like. And so these targets are supposed to add up overall to the overall EU ambition to slash the use and risk.
So the only binding target is the overall ambition,
which is 50%.
50%. Of course, in order to reach that ambition, you have to apply a formula that is included in one of the annex. I remember the seventh annex of the proposal. It's public. It's public. And so the Commission did an exercise. It was requested by the member states, but the Commission did this exercise. It's called exercise. So basically, send the member states, the capitals, the alleged targets that they should put in their reduction plan in order to reach the overall ambition. And it turns out that the situation is, I remember 62% for Italy or 55% for France, and so.
There's a few that are over 60%, and there's at least 10 that are over 50%.
And of course they were shocked. Some of them are wondering if they send the right numbers to the Commission. But again, it's just applying the formula that is included in the annex. So again, it was an exercise, but still was quite shocking for some member states. And now they're basically asking the Commission to do another impact assessment in order to fix the potential critical situation that could. But again.
But not only, I mean, a large part of their argument is that there was a kind of impact assessment from the Commission, but that this was carried out before the Ukraine war.
It needs to be updated.
The argument from ministers, and actually we also heard this from MEPs in the Agri Committee very recently, the argument is that the situation has changed. So how can we have an impact assessment? Is their line?
To be fair, the proposal changed already because of the Ukraine war. Because we had the leak in February, and then they decided to stop it, and then in the end they presented the proposal in late June, So, and I remember the first leak was completely different. And also the Commission told us that they took into consideration the member state complaints even before the presentation of the proposal. So.
Quite a twisty story. This one.
It's mostly because they're shocked about the exercise. Let's say.
But what was interesting was that the Commission was present at this meeting. Actually, it was Food Safety Commissioner Stella Kyriakides, and she was pretty firm on this. She was basically like, "We're not budging on this. This is not happening." She was calling on member states to maintain the ambition. She was saying that she thinks it's entirely fair and that she's not looking to change anything. So it's going to be a bit of a standoff.
It's true. It's true that it's going to be a bit of a standoff, but the lawmakers are in the council and in the European Parliament. So it's true that the Commission defends their argument, but in the end, it's the minister that actually, they're supposed to decide and to take the final decision together with the other side of the lawmaking process, which is the European Parliament. So yeah, no, I mean,
story to be continued.
Yeah, indeed.
TBC.
And for this week focus, I'll bring you to my home country, Italy, where a few weeks ago I attended a field visit to the production site of a leading company in the production and marketing of biologicals. The company is called Valagro, and it's headquartered in Atessa in the beautiful Abruzzo region, and it's been acquired recently in 2020 by the multinational Syngenta Group. I spoke to some people there to understand a bit more of this new world of biologicals.
I'm Giuseppe Natale, CEO, co-founder of Valagro. At Valagro, we produce a specialty fertilizer, plant biostimulant. In few sentences, we help growers to produce more, better quality food using less resources.
So biologicals are basically products that provide growers with a more sustainable way for growing their crops, and they can actually be a great help in the reduction of pesticide use, for instance, but at the same time they can contribute to reducing nutrient losses while ensuring no deterioration of soil fertility, and they're also allowed in organic farming. As you know, all the things that I listed are important components of the EU Sustainable Food Policy Framework, the very ambitious farm to fork strategy. And one thing that I noticed is that there must be high ambition at the basis of the decision to do research in this field, but also some kind of great awareness of the future challenges of the food production sector. For instance, I asked Giuseppe what is, according to him, the most pressing issue for the sector.
What we consider really important today is to have more attention, more focus on the soil health. Today, we lose 100 billions per year because of the soil degradation. Soil is part of the life in the planet. In a spoon of soil, there is 1 billion of microorganisms. So it's living material, and it's really truly important that we manage the soil in an accountable manner, respecting the soil, but also understanding from a scientific point of view what are the interactions between soil and productivity.
Okay, but what are these biologicals? Well, there are basically two types of biologicals, biostimulants and biocontrol products. Biostimulants are focused on enhancing the plant's natural ability to overcome abiotic stresses, whether that be heat stress or salinity, for instance. In a sense, biostimulants are focused on making the plants healthier and are applied to plants to stimulate natural processes, while biocontrol is more focused on biotic stress, like pests, for instance, in order to allow the crop to find its full potential. And the two combined together could result in an overall integrated pest management program on a specific farm. You might remember that this concept of integrated pest management, IPM, is actually mandatory. So the IPM principles are an important part of the strategy to decrease farmers' dependence on pesticides, actually since the first sustainable use of pesticide directive, which now is, we talked before about its revision. But so basically, IPM is this ecosystem-based strategy that focuses on the long-term prevention of pests through a combination of techniques applied in an order of hierarchy so that it can minimize the use of chemical plant protection products to the greatest extent possible. And you also remember that IPM principle, even though they are a mandatory part of the sustainable use of pesticide framework in the EU, they've been slow, and actually the support. Its spread have been slow, and the support is lacking, and this is coming from a warning from the EU Court of Auditors in 2020. Anyway, there's also a difference in the use of biostimulants and biocontrol, and I talk about that with Corey Hack, who's the head of biological division for Syngenta.
Biostimulants are more broadly used than biocontrols. There's a few elements for that. One is the science that's really becoming uncovered under biostimulants is finding the market faster. It's a component of two things. One of the science is advancing at a faster rate, and it's advancing because there's a lot more capital, whether it be venture capital, outside investments, than biocontrols. Biocontrols are still being funded and still being invested in, but the regulatory process is significantly longer to get a biocontrol registered and for sale. So that's the fundamental difference between biostimulants and biocontrols in terms of regulatory, and then the amount of investment they're getting is time to market.
And biologicals is a growing market because, for instance, consumers are asking for no residues in their food, pesticide residues, of course, and or, for instance, farmers through these products can improve crop resilience due to climate change. But let's hear again from Corey how the market for biologicals is being shaped.
The global biologicals market today is $4 billion, and that's about split evenly between biostimulants and biocontrols. It's going to grow at annual compounded rate about 10% over the next 10 years. So by 2030, it'll be a $10 million market. We do see the biostimulants outgrowing the biocontrols over that time.
And of course, the visit to this production facility of these biostimulants was particularly interesting, as I basically had the chance to have a sneak peek at all the processes, from how they select the raw materials in the chemistry unit to how they test it on plants in the plant science unit, and how plants respond after the application or in different climatic conditions such as drought or biotic stress in general. And after a very long process, they can start making, the scientists, they can start making specific claims on the specific efficacy of the extracts. Of course, in an attempt to translate this knowledge about that raw materials to farmers, which are ultimately the end user. And but another interesting aspect is that the raw material at the basis of the process can be everything. Like, for instance, I was looking at the process with seaweed extracts, but the researchers are trying to valorize as much as possible something that can be considered as waste from the production process, in order to maintain this concept of circular economy. And also, the level of technology is quite the thing there. I was particularly impressed by the genomic elaboration, basically the genomic fingerprint that researcher can have from the genetic information, which make possible to understand all the mechanism inside the plant and literally to switch on or switch off one particular characteristic like photosynthetic efficiency or tolerance or even water scarcity. And it's honestly a level of technology we normally don't associate to agriculture products.
Hello, my name is Jaroslava Buchta, and today in our Flavor of the Week part, I will continue the biostimulators theme by Gerardo with a very interesting and very useful plant, nettle. Nettle can be often found growing in wild nature, like in parks, forests, and gardens. Majority of its species have leaves covered by tiny hair-like barbs. If you touch them, they often cause rashes, bumps, hives, and itchiness. But don't be discouraged by that, as a plant may have a lot of different applications and its itchy production can be easily overcome. Since here we're talking about the flavor of the week, I'll start from the fact that nettle is used in cooking in different countries for pastry, first and second dishes, and even as tea. Soak for a couple of minutes in hot water. It won't cause any more harm and can be used the same as, for example, spinach. Tastes very similar as well in cakes, pasta, soups, even pizza and pesto. In Ukraine, by the way, it's often a part of the so-called green borscht, or sorrel soup in other words. The herb itself has antibacterial, antifungal, and anti-inflammatory properties. It's rich in vitamins A, B, C, and K, along with containing carotene and iron. It can be also used for making your immune system stronger, so you may want to check out nettle tea during these cold days. Finally, coming back to biostimulators, nettles soaked for a couple of days in water can be used as a good fertilizer, as checked and confirmed by my mom. But, as a disclaimer from my mom, you wouldn't be very happy to use it in the office, for example, due to its absolutely natural smell of manure. I quote. And as a bonus, this herb grows in quite a lot of places, so it can be absolutely free. Just be sure to collect it in clean places and use gloves against itchy stings.
And that's all from us this week. This week, the Agrifood Podcast is produced by EURACTIV's Agrifood team, Gerardo, Fortuna, and Natasha Foot, with the technical support of Evi Chiori.
You can also find this podcast on all major streaming platforms. That includes Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the latest news from the EU. I'm Natasha Foot. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.